All right. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, all you magnificent melonheads of the world. Happy Monday, everybody. Today is November 18th, 2024, and the new week is upon us. It's going to be a big week. We've got Nvidia earnings this week. They're coming up on Wednesday. It's the biggest financial event of the quarter, in my opinion, especially considering this massive bubble that has built up around Nvidia. And the biggest story this morning, you'd never guess if you look at the front page on CNBC or on Bloomberg or any of the financial news outlets, because you can't find it on the front page of any of the big financial news outlets. You got to scroll all the way down, and you got to squint and close one eye and hop on one foot and rub your belly at the same time. And then you can just barely make it out in the bottom right-hand corner, all the way down below the fold. There's the story about the information reporting that Nvidia has asked their server designers to redesign the racks because their new Blackwell chips are overheating. Now, I just want to emphasize that so far this is an exclusive report from the information, and there are a lot of critics of the information out there who are insisting that this is misinformation, and Jim Cramer saying, oh, this is a short-planted story, blah, 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 blah. Let me remind you guys that these same cast of characters said that exact thing the last time the information reported that there was a problem with NVIDIA's Blackwell chips. And guess what? There was a problem with NVIDIA's Blackwell chips last time. The information was right. And Jim Cramer didn't eat any crow. And that angry piece of fruit that sends me threatening DMs, he did not admit that he was totally wrong about that story. Nope. So what do we have? We have an unconfirmed story about major problems with NVIDIA's marquee product, the Blackwell GPU. Now, will we hear anything about this in the earnings call on Wednesday? I don't know. The last time, NVIDIA denied it right up until they didn't deny it, and it delayed the Blackwell release by about 3 months. Now, supposedly, the Blackwell chips are now being shipped. Well, are they being shipped with a known overheat issue while they're simultaneously asking the server makers to redesign them? That might be a material issue that might affect NVIDIA's earnings. So we'll see what they say about that later this week. That is assuming the press even asks anything about it. I had to go hunting for that story. I found out about it on Twitter yesterday, and you'd think it would be the first story that comes up on CNBC. Oh, hey, $18 trillion stock bubble has inflated around this company that is now having a problem with its signature product. Maybe that's news? Nope. You got to go looking for it. And by the way, speaking of those server designers or the suppliers being asked to redesign the servers, there's really only two companies that make those servers for NVIDIA. One is Dell, and the other Supermicro. And that deadline has come, and that deadline has gone. And we still don't have Supermicro's plan. We still don't have any news about delisting. We heard nothing over the weekend. Now, Friday afternoon, late Friday, there was a story in Barron's that, according to an anonymous source, according to this guy who's everywhere, Mr. Familiar with the Matter. This guy, he's in every boardroom around the country. He's in every important geopolitical meeting. This guy, familiar with the matter, heard that Supermicro plans to have a plan by today, and Supermicro stock is up 13% on that news. I kid you not. An anonymously sourced article that Supermicro thinks that maybe they might have a plan by the deadline to get delisted for their second accounting fraud in 6 years, and the stock is up 13%. I'm telling you guys, these AI bros, these people that are buying into these stocks, they are the equivalent, I've mentioned this a few times, they are the equivalent of the question mark on Ron Burgundy's teleprompter. They will buy anything. All right, there's a company with a documented history of fraud, several histories of fraud, and then a damning report. Their auditor resigns, saying this management is just totally full of it. But you know what? A guy who's not willing to have his name released says that by the deadline, they'll have a plan. They plan to have a plan. And then I guess we're all just assuming that if they ask for approval of this plan, that the NASDAQ's just going to grant it to them. I can't imagine why the NASDAQ would grant it to them, but yeah, sure. Go ahead, buy the stock. Good luck with that, guys. All right. I mean, seriously, just go to the casino and put your money on black or red. At this point, it's the same thing. So Supermicro, if we don't hear by the end of the day, you have to assume it's getting delisted, or maybe their plan to have a plan actually comes to fruition, and maybe the NASDAQ approves it, and that just buys them a couple more months to eventually get delisted anyway, like happened last time. Tesla stock is also popping this morning. Quite a bit, actually. There's a report that the Trump transition team is making the relaxation or streamlining of regulations around self-driving cars a priority. So Tesla stock is up big on that news. Now, Tesla stock last week was down big on the news that the Trump transition team will be targeting electric vehicle tax credits. So it seems Elon has given up the tax credits, and in exchange, he's getting more lax regulations for self-driving. Robotaxis is the next big thing for Tesla, and so that stock is up on that news this morning. We've also got Spirit Airlines has officially filed for bankruptcy. We reported last week that that was expected any day. We actually got that filing this morning. The equity of the existing shareholders is going to be wiped out, and the bondholders will basically seize the entire company. They're also pumping several $100 million more into it. And then over the weekend, we had the, do we call it entertaining? It was entertaining for all the wrong reasons. The Netflix Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fight finally happened over the weekend. 60 million households tuned in to a largely buffering and grainy picture. Unfortunately, the highlight of this fight, and I use the term loosely, was Mike Tyson's nearly 60-year-old bare ass, because beyond that, it was the most boring fight since that time you saw two skaters fighting in high school when they spent 3/4 of the time pulling up their shorts. It was a terrible fight, but you know what? They made a lot of money. 60 million people watched it. Jake Paul and Mike Tyson each bringing home 8 figures for that one. Even though there was a lot of people were disappointed, saying it was a boring fight, a lot of people saying it was a rigged fight. Whatever it was a joke. In my opinion, the real winner of that fight between Tyson and Paul was Dana White and the UFC, because it just proves that boxing is just not as nearly as entertaining as mixed martial arts. We've also got John Deere is temporarily shutting down a factory in Iowa that I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I can't remember it. But it's, trouble in the ag space. And I got an email from somebody in my Patreon group not too long ago, a guy who works in agriculture. And he said he's been getting solicitations, messages from the John Deere suppliers saying that they're offering 0% financing, no interest, no money down for parts and equipment, trying to, move that equipment now. And now you're hearing about their factories are going idle. So all the problems we're seeing in the automotive space, it seems to be translating into farm equipment as well. Those lower grain prices certainly not helping things there. And the Russians are playing games with the energy supply once again. This time it's uranium. Russians announced restrictions on exports of uranium, sending those prices higher. Once again, Russia is using their energy resources as a geopolitical bargaining chip. We got a lot to talk about this morning. Why don't we shrink my big melon of a head and let's see what's going on in the market, shall we? And if you don't mind, hit that like button while you're here. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button as well and have your coffee with the melon heads as we go through markets every morning. Right now, the S&P is essentially flat here, up 4 points or 0.07% higher. We've got the Dow is down by about 70 points here, or 0.16% to the downside. But the NASDAQ is higher at about 75 points higher, 0.36% to the upside here. So 2 of the 3 indexes are in the green this morning, hence the bull thumbnail. Meanwhile, the dollar's a little bit weaker here at 106.55. That's down about 14 basis points. And looking over at the bond market, we got a little bit of a mixed bag here in bonds this morning. 30-year Treasury yield is up 4.5 points at 4.644%. We've got the 10-year at 4.456. That's up almost 3 basis points. The 2-year is at 4.299. That's essentially unchanged. And the 1 month is at 4.591, down a half a point. Not a lot of movement in bonds. Commodities, we've got a lot of green, probably being helped by that slightly weaker dollar this morning. Gold is having a pretty good morning here, back above $2,600 an ounce for spot gold, $2,605. That's up almost $44 or 1.7% higher. Spot silver is at $30.92, up 71 cents this morning, 2.35% higher for spot silver. I like the shiny. Copper, meanwhile, is up 0.33%. Platinum is up 2%. Palladium is up 4.3%. And WTI crude is also up this morning, about 85 cents higher for January WTI futures at 67.76. That's up 1.25%. Let's take a look at Bitcoin this morning. We are still hovering around 90,000. We've been doing some consolidating here between the high 80s and the low 90s for the better part of the last 3 or 4 days. Right now, it's about $150 higher this morning. There was a story this morning that Michael Saylor had announced MicroStrategy had bought another 51,780 Bitcoin for about $4.6 billion. That's money from the proceeds of the issuance of new shares of MicroStrategy. So they paid about $88,800 per Bitcoin. So Saylor is still buying here. Bitcoin, though, treading water right around 90,000. Now let's talk about the main story this morning. And again, I cannot imagine how this is not the biggest story in finance right now. I had to really go look for this one on the front page of Bloomberg. They're burying this story. Nvidia faces new chip server design snag, the information says. And I guess that's the point the financial press is trying to make. They're just like, well, it's this website, the information, and we don't trust them. But the information has been almost perfect. To my knowledge, the information has not gotten anything wrong in the last couple of months. It's a relatively new website, or at least I was only been made aware of it recently. The last time the information reported about a problem with Blackwell chips, they accused them of being shorts. They accused them of, being rigged and fake news. And they ended up being right. So you have to defer to the information on this one, in my opinion here. Nvidia has in recent months asked suppliers to change the design of the server racks for its new Blackwell graphics processing unit due to an overheating problem, leading to worries about delays, the information reported, citing company employees, customers, and suppliers who weren't identified. So again, anonymously sourced. You got to take that with a grain of salt, I guess. The changes to the Blackwell racks have come late in the production process, according to the technology-focused publication. Nvidia hasn't notified customers of a delay. Well, that's kind of a big deal. A spokesperson for Nvidia declined to comment to the information on whether the company has finalized the Blackwell rack designs. The company already hit engineering snags in the development of its Blackwell chip lineup, slowing the release by at least a quarter. Nvidia is the world's most valuable company by market cap, and they report quarterly earnings on November 20th. So there's problems with the servers overheating. Now, this is not necessarily a problem with the Blackwell chip themselves. It could be a problem with the server designs. You rearrange them, you change the airflow, you change the liquid cooler. I don't know, whatever they do. Maybe this is an easily solved problem, but these things are supposed to be out there moving right now. They were supposed to be shipped at the beginning of October. Now here we are in the middle of November, and they're only just beginning to move. And now we're hearing about a new problem. And of course, in rather hilarious fashion, Jim Cramer just had to weigh in on this one. This was from yesterday night. Usual short planted story going around about how Nvidia's Blackwell is not as easy to set up as people thought. I have read this story for months now. No, you haven't, Jim. This story just came out over the weekend. You haven't read this for months. Of course, Nvidia is in quiet period and can't defend itself. Tiresome attempt by a publication constantly in search of relevancy. Wow, Jim, you upset here, bud? Is the information making it hard for you to pump this stock on unsuspecting retail investors? Usual short planted story. Again, the last time the information came out with this, they were right, Jim. And he's saying you've been reading this story for months now. No, you haven't. This story just came out. And NVIDIA's in its quiet period and can't defend itself. Well, the last time NVIDIA was in their quiet period, they declined to comment. And then a few weeks later, they confirmed that this story was real. So I don't know. Ask Jim Cramer how he feels about Bear Stearns stock, if he still likes that one, because he's pretty vocal about this story this morning. I'll also ask him how his interview with Elizabeth Holmes is going. NVIDIA right now down about 1.8%, $139.46, down about $2.50. It's still hovering near all-time highs, guys. It's the most valuable company in the world here. So it's barely moving on this news. Now, the server racks have to be redesigned. That is not something that Supermicro is probably eager to do, because they got their own problem here. Supermicro stock rises as filing to avoid delisting is awaited. Dumbest headline I've ever read for 1,000, Alex. Supermicro stock rises as the filing to avoid a delisting is awaited. That is how stupid this market has become. Just sit there and admire the beautiful, unbelievable stupidity of this headline. Stock rises awaiting delisting. This market will buy anything. Supermicro Computer was rising sharply early Monday as investors awaited a planned filing that would allow the server maker to avoid being delisted. The company has delayed filing its 10K for fiscal year ended June 30th. It's something every company must do to maintain the listing on one of the two major U.S. exchanges. Supermicro also delayed the filing of its quarterly 10Q last week After receiving a letter from the listing qualifications department of the NASDAQ, Supermicro had 60 calendar days to file or submit a plan to the NASDAQ to regain compliance with listing rules. Based on that calculation, the deadline would have been November 16th. Now, since that fell on a Saturday, the deadline is now today. But because the date fell on a Saturday, there was a possibility of an extension. A person familiar with the matter told Barron's last week that Supermicro intends to submit a plan by Monday that will allow it to continue to trade on the NASDAQ. And if you loved the stupidity of the headline, then you've just got to love the just amazing ignorance of this last sentence here, because this one sentence here is the meat and potatoes of this article. A person familiar with the matter, there's that guy again. He's everywhere. He told Barron's that last week Supermicro intends to submit a plan for approval by Monday. So an anonymous source says this company with a documented history of fraud plans to have a plan by the deadline, and the stock goes up 12.75% pre-market, $20.95, up $2.37 this morning. On the plan, or on the anonymous report of a plan to have a plan, they're cautiously optimistic that hopefully, maybe someday, possibly, they might not get delisted. Stock rallies 13%. This market will buy anything. You got to love it. Maybe we'll have more information by the close of business today. But I would just add, guys, just submitting a plan doesn't get you there. The plan's got to be approved. The NASDAQ has to approve it. Why would the NASDAQ approve a plan? If I'm the NASDAQ, there's only one plan I'm going to approve, and that plan would be the immediate resignation of Charles Lang and the entire C-suite of executives, along with the entire board of directors, and a plan for the company to cease operations and appoint a trustee to oversee the liquidation of all the assets, as an example to any future fraudsters who are considering doing what Supermicro has done. That plan I might approve if I was the NASDAQ, but I'm not the NASDAQ. We'll see what they do. Also going on this morning, Tesla stock pops over 6% in pre-market after a report that Trump wants to relax U.S. self-driving rules. So we know now what Elon is getting for the Doge recommendation to get rid of the electric vehicle tax credits. He's getting more lax standards on self-driving cars. Tesla shares jumped on Monday following a report that President-elect Donald Trump's transition team are planning to make a federal framework to regulate self-driving vehicles a top priority for the U.S. Transportation Department. Just as soon as we get Mayor Pete out of there, we're going to have some streamlined regulations, I guess. Tesla stock is up almost 6% here pre-market. I don't know why this thing is jumping back and forth. I hate the new Yahoo Finance, by the way. $339.57 ahead of the opening bell. Why is it doing that? I don't know. Let's get off of this screen. Spirit Airlines files for bankruptcy following failed JetBlue tie-up. The discount carrier has seen rivals lure some travelers away, and Spirit struggled after earlier JetBlue merger was blocked. We knew this one was coming, guys. They've actually officially filed now. A couple of details of the plan here I want to go over. Under the plan, existing bondholders will take control of the company, which will be delisted unless they have a plan for a plan, maybe. Anyway, they'll be delisted after swapping $795 million of debt into equity. Bondholders have also committed to inject $350 million of fresh equity and provide $300 million of debtor in possession financing to support it through the Chapter 11 process, the company said in a statement. So existing shareholders of Spirit Airlines will get bupkis. The bondholders are seizing the company. The stock is trading at $1.12 here. This thing it's going to zero. I don't know if it's halted right now on a Chapter 11 filing, but this is dead money here. We'll see what the company looks like coming out of bankruptcy. Netflix said a record 60 million households worldwide tuned in to see Mike Tyson's bare 60-year-old ass in the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight. The boxing match between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson was one for the record books. Netflix said 60 million households tuned in, peaking at 65 million concurrent streams. Gate receipts for the fight surpassed 18 million in revenue. Most Valuable Promotion said it is the biggest gate outside of Las Vegas. And I'm going to skip past all the numbers here. The fight dominated the social conversation, with hashtag Paul Tyson becoming the #1 trending topic on X, formerly Twitter. It wasn't all good news for Netflix, however. Many viewers experienced buffering issues, streaming glitches, and low-resolution video disrupting their ability to watch the fight, which was boring as all get out, by the way. Data from Down Detector showed people reporting issues throughout the night, with outages peaking at more than 95,000 around 11 p.m. Eastern time. Now, Kisa Bedarian, co-founder of MVP, told CNBC's Closing Bell on Friday that both Tyson and Paul will make 8 figures from the fight, and Taylor and Serrano, that is the undercard women's boxing match that happened before the Tyson-Paul fight, they will have a record payday for women's boxing as well. So, look, they made a lot of money, but the fight was a joke, guys. It was not entertaining, not even a little bit. Netflix stock down about 1% here, 0.92% lower, $817 for Netflix. Look, Netflix just isn't ready for live sports yet. That's the takeaway. All the buffering and the streaming issues. If you're having a big live sporting event, make sure you got enough server space. Make sure you can handle the capacity, and they couldn't. Also going on this morning, John Deere's Ottumwa Works. Did I say that right? The Ottumwa Works will temporarily close in December due to sluggish demand. This is the second factory closure or temporary layoff due to sluggish demand. Stellantis had a similar story to this one a couple of weeks ago. John Deere has announced it will suspend production at its plant in Ottumwa for a month in the wake of reduced customer demand for its products. The Ottumwa facility will shut down from the early December to early January, the company said. The plant manufactures hay and forage equipment. Deere had announced earlier it was moving mower production from Ottumwa to Mexico, resulting in the company offering early retirement packages to 103 employees. We'll see if Mr. Orange has anything to say about that, by the way. That historically has not gone over so well with the Donald. The Ottumwa Works employs less than 400 employees who will receive close to their normal pay while the plant is idled, according to the UAW Local 74, which represents the workers. And, shout out to my buddy Doug, who sent me a message saying that John Deere was really trying to push their sales, offering 0% interest, free financing. If you order any of their stuff, got to stuff that channel somehow. And now they are temporarily idling their factory. This is usually a predecessor to layoffs. Deere stock is down a little more than 0.5% here, 0.65% ahead of the open, trading at $396.36. And the last one I want to talk about, this one hit the tape late Friday. Russia takes aim at U.S. nuclear power by throttling uranium. Enriched uranium needed in reactors supplying 19% of U.S. power. Russia says it's responding to the U.S. law curbing uranium imports. Russia is temporarily limiting exports of enriched uranium to the U.S., creating potential supply risks to utilities operating American reactors that generate almost a fifth of the nation's electricity. The Russian government didn't provide details of the restrictions on their duration on Friday in a statement on Telegram. Utilities tend to make purchases well in advance, so any impact is unlikely to be immediate. That's an understatement, guys. Nuclear facilities, they order their uranium fuel years ahead of time, so I wouldn't expect this to really change the dynamics in the power industry anytime soon. As Russia's prolonged war in Ukraine has made it increasingly unpopular on the world stage, the nation has repeatedly signaled a willingness to use its vast energy resources as geopolitical bargaining chips. Russia also told Austria on Friday that it's throttling gas supplies, interrupting a 6-decade supply agreement currently covering 80% of demand because of a legal dispute. So Russia, uranium prices were up about 4.5% at market open here. So slightly higher uranium prices, not exactly a spike, but 4.5%. That's a pretty significant move there. Russians are playing games once again with the energy supply. And I just want to say thank you very much to Mr. Charles G. He says, so you're saying to buy SMCI? No, I'm not. Now, Charles, let me just throw the caveat in here. I went looking at 2018, back the last time Supermicro was delisted. Actually, they didn't actually get delisted, I think, until August of the following year. But it was almost the bottom. Supermicro bottomed about 2 months after they got delisted back in 2018 on a report of the big hack, was a story that I talked about on my Friday live stream, a story that is still debated to this day about Chinese planting chips on Supermicro motherboards that would basically phone home and report on whatever those servers were doing. And those servers had been installed on U.S. Navy ships and DoD facilities and things like that. Now, that's a story that a lot of companies still to this day deny. But the point was Supermicro bottomed pretty close. And it actually, the day it was delisted, it actually rallied a little bit. So no, I'm not saying buy Supermicro. I would not touch that with a 10-foot pole, an 11-foot pole, my worst enemy's money. Hell no. The company is run by crooks. And in my opinion, that stock should go to zero. That's I think they should sell off the company. The name Supermicro should disappear into oblivion. Charles Lang should never be allowed to manage a publicly traded company in the United States ever again. The guy's a crook. He's still a crook. They rehired the crooks they fired after the first time they got caught with their crookery. No, I'm not saying don't buy. I'm not saying buy SMCI. Definitely not. But SMCI, apparently they got to redesign their server racks because the Blackwells are overheating, according to the information and according to Jim Cramer's angry little rant. Thank you very much, Charles, for the super chat, sir. And thank you, KDM, who says, since people can't buy EVs with a tax credit, he'll sell robo-taxis to public transportation agencies that buy with borrowed money. Now we're thinking outside the box, KDM. Different subsidy. Well, it may not be a subsidy. It's more of an eased regulation. Look, as long as these things aren't like crashing into people's living rooms and killing people, or at least as long as they're not causing accidents at a higher frequency than human-controlled people, I have no problem with lax regulations. So, generally, I'm a government hands-off, Lego my ego kind of guy. That being said, if financing campaigns in order to infiltrate the government in order to bring about those lax regulations, that's a little crony capitalist there. So I like the EV tax credits going away. I like the idea of lax regulations, but let's actually make sure these things aren't death traps. That's all I would say about that one. Thank you very much, KDM. I appreciate the super chat, sir. And thank you again to Charles G. He says, Netflix better fix it before Christmas. I heard they bought the rights for the Christmas football game. Oh, my God. Oh, boy. Good God. Well, isn't that going to be wonderful? Yeah. Look, Netflix just not ready for live sports yet, guys. That's the one thing I've seen there. And does anybody actually sign up for Netflix because of the sports package? Is that why? I guess they're trying to put the final nail in the coffin of traditional TV. They're going after ESPN, what's left of ESPN over there. Disney earnings showed ESPN was still doing terribly. I don't know. Streaming has issues there. Whenever there's these big, highly televised events, you get these big bottlenecks in the servers and you end up with grainy buffering pictures. They got to figure out a way to solve for that surge in viewerships. Existing TV doesn't have that problem that streaming does. So, hey, they got until Christmas to fix that. So we're looking forward to that one, Charles. Thank you very much, sir, for supporting the channel. And thank you, everybody, for having your coffee with the Melonheads this morning. I appreciate that very much. Shout out to my magnanimous Melonheads on Patreon and YouTube. You guys are awesome. Thank you for supporting the channel. Links down below, should you feel so inclined. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. I love you guys. Everybody, till next time, live small and dream big.